Would you abort your child that was going to be born with severe disabilities? Why or why not? My close friend has a severely mentally and physically disabled child. It's thankless, exhausting, doesn't leave the parents any time to just be their own persons, and you don't get to experience all the joys of parenting, like watching your child grow, learn new things, build friendships and relationships, get an education and a job they enjoy. Honestly, it sucks. It sucks for her, her husband, her other kid, and most of all for the disabled kid who is in constant pain and needs 20 medications a day to just survive, and will just be sitting in a care facility for the rest of her life once her parents pass. So yeah, no, nobody wins in this. Severe? Yes. I watched my nephew suffer for 8 years. He was okay, as in content. For the first few years he loved lights and colors, and because he couldn't walk, he was obsessed with feet. He would roll on the floor, and my dad lowered his fish tank for him. It was his favorite, and we all wore funny socks and slippers, and oh my god, his laughter when my sister would wear these slippers of reindeers with bells on them. It was a musical laugh, very happy. He had a feeding tube, and loved cuddles. Sweet baby, but always a baby, even at 50 pounds. Very hard on my sister. BC. His dad left as soon as my nephew was diagnosed, 3 months. But as my nephew's illness progressed, so did his pain. By the end, he was in pain 247. He was a child, really, a baby, BC. Even though he was 8, he didn't have an 8-year-old's mental capacity, and all he knew was pain. I couldn't do that to a person if I could prevent it. My sister had no idea he was disabled when she was pregnant, BTW. I don't know what she would have done if she had known, but she didn't. All tests were normal. He died at home. He had seizure after seizure, and eventually either he stopped breathing or his heart stopped. They don't know which happened first. My sister has, obviously, never been the same. Also, my other nephew also had PTSD from seeing his brother so sick. It's so hard, on everyone. I could not do it. I remember hearing about a study about this exact same thing. Unsurprisingly, most parents would rather choose abortion if they knew their kid would end up with a disability. Edit, thanks for the silver and upvotes. I'd like to make something known. When I mentioned disability from a study I heard a while ago, it was something more to do with severe disabilities. I use the general meaning of the word disability because I don't remember the exact study nor the disabilities stated in such study, thus the generalization. Although I still felt the need to use the word disability in case mild or medium disabilities were included in that study regardless. As far as I remember, to the best of my memory, I believe Down syndrome was included in it. Unsurprisingly, most parents would rather choose abortion if they knew their kid would end up with a disability. My neighbor has a daughter with a severe disability. She shared with me that, if she had known when she was pregnant that her child would have the issues she has, she would have aborted. The misery outweighs the few occasional joys. Yeah, my sister had a late-term miscarriage and had to deliver her dead son, who would have been severely disabled if he had lived. I remember hearing her sob to my dad for hours about how she felt guilty that relief was one of the emotions she was feeling along with grief. My wife did. The fetus tested positive for Edwards syndrome. Just given those test results, the chance of a live birth dropped to 5%. Assuming the baby was born, the median life expectancy was measured in days. Likely disabilities include kidney malformations, structural heart defects at birth, intestines protruding outside the body, esophageal atresia, intellectual disability, developmental delays, growth deficiency, feeding difficulties, breathing difficulties, and arthrogryposis. Skimming Wikipedia, apparently results have got better since we dealt with this, but still nothing like good quality of life, so she had the abortion. It was a relatively easy decision as these things go. That was her first pregnancy. The second one was healthy. Our daughter is in school at the moment. She's tiring and often annoying, but in age-appropriate ways. If my wife didn't have the abortion, we probably wouldn't have had her. We might not have been able to. The first pregnancy could have caused health problems, and we might not have wanted to, given the expense and trauma we would have gone through. When abortion bans are in the news, I often think, if that had been the law for us, our daughter wouldn't be alive. My greatest fear is that my wife and I would have a child with my genetics. I have epidermolysis bullosa simplex, basically a protein deficiency that causes the layers of skin to not stick together. So my skin cracks, blisters and peels constantly. More severe cases cause the skin to peel off like taking off a glove. I don't know that I would ever want to put that on my child. To have to live with constant hospitalizations and infection. Likely to live a very short life. I was lucky. If it was determined that my child would end up with a severe case, I wouldn't want them to suffer. Edit, Wow, didn't think that many people cared about a condition like this. For those saying adopt, I cannot reply to all of you, but it is always on the table when we discuss children. IVF is also on the table. Especially with some of the advances in modern medicine for early detection. Finally, for me, my case largely revolves around my hands, feet and legs. Though I could certainly see it being a problem in more sensitive areas for others. I have never met an adult with this condition. I work NICU, so I've only ever seen the severe side of it in newborns. Basically, anything that touches them causes their skin to blister and slough off. We need to do dressing changes twice a day, and each dressing change takes apex 3 hours to do. I've never seen a child survive longer than 3 months because they usually end up maxed out on pain medications and with a raging infection due to the loss of their protective skin barrier. It's horrific. Thank you for being a NICU nurse. My son was born before 24 weeks and spent 4 months in the NICU, 3+ on event. We spent almost 24 hours a day in the NICU, yep, those parents, and we really saw what a tough job it is. We were very lucky, and he is healthy and happy, valedictorian of his high school class, college graduate and doing well in his career. Wouldn't have happened without the wonderful care of the NICU staff, especially the nurses. Yes, absolutely. I worked in a pediatric ICU for 4 years, and medicine has gotten too good at keeping people alive. Kids would sit for months and months connected to CRRT, dialysis, and ECMO, heart-lung machine, literally wasting away before ultimately dying. And when they die, they don't resemble anything like a kid. They look like puffy little aliens who sometimes have lost the perfusion to their hands and feet, so now they're dead and black. It's horrific, and I can't imagine putting a child through that. I also cannot imagine spending my days sitting in a hospital room watching that happen to my child. I agree fully about modern medicine being a bit too good at this. The idea that a life must be preserved no matter what is not humane. My mother had terminal brain cancer and spent her last month of life in a coma, slowly starving to death while we waited for her organs to fail and kill her. If I'd allowed the feeding tube, she would have lasted months with zero quality of life. Her mind was gone. We are keeping people alive who would absolutely have died in prior centuries. If it means they get to recover, it's great. When they don't stand a prayer of recovery and we just drag out endless suffering and minimal quality of life, it's brutal. It's ducking scary, the idea that you can essentially be kept alive in a state where you can't walk, talk, hear, see, eat, breathe, or even think. It truly must be the worst possible way to die. So insanely torturous and drawn out. What's scary is that this is the default option. This is what happens even with a DNR. Without a DNR, they will try even harder to keep you alive, even if alive has no quality of life or hope of recovery. Suicide isn't allowed in most places. Assisted suicide isn't allowed. We'd euthanize an animal in this condition out of love because we didn't want it to suffer. We have made it illegal to do the same for a person. To the point where even the person who will be suffering or is suffering is not allowed to make this choice. We knew this was coming for months with my mother, and the best I could do was promise to try not to drag it out. This is coming from a severely disabled person, battling a life-threatening illness, severe, life-threatening, or basically any disability that would make my child's quality of life extremely poor non-exist? Yes, absolutely. Any other less severe version of the disability? No, they should be able to see the world if they have some quality of life to be able to do so. Not to be too morbid, but I wish my parents made the more humane decision and aborted me. I'm not even 30 and am already connected to tubes, porticeth, for the rest of my life. Treatment isn't covered by insurance, so I have to pay out of pocket, and not even getting the full treatment I need. I just cannot afford it. I don't know how much longer my body can handle. Fighting my life-threatening condition, day in and day out, and not seeing any cure in sight ? I can't even begin to explain the type of burnout I have for life. Yup. I had a child with severe disabilities, and watched her suffer for months before she finally died. I would not wish that on any child. Absolutely, I would abort. I grew up with a sister who was held back at birth. Her highest measurable IQ is 2 years 6 months at feeding herself. She is in her mid-late 60s now. No one in our very large family had a normal childhood. We all had to watch her and take care of her. She's older than me, but I still had to take care of her toilet needs, and I often had to clean up floors, furniture and laundry, plus her, when I wasn't even a teenager yet. As I was closest in age, it fell to me to be her caregiver and eventually her guardian. A large part of my life has been devoted to her. I knew very early on that I would never want to give birth to a mentally challenged kid. I lived in fear that my own child would be held back and end up oxygen deprived and be like her. I never had a clue what a real childhood should be until I got a lot older. I often think how different the lives of my siblings, parents and myself would be, had she been born as a normal person. I could never willingly give birth to a mentally disabled person and mess the lives of my other kids and my spouse up so drastically. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, but the sacrifices, the workload, and the mental and emotional pain, is a steep price for a kid, or a parent to pay. As a fellow sibling of a disabled adult, my sister died 6 years ago. I'd like to recommend you check out SibNet on Facebook. It's a closed group for adult siblings of people with disabilities, and I can't begin to tell you what a positive difference it made to my life. There's nothing like the feeling of talking to people who really understand, and sharing all the highs and lows. It made me feel like a normal person, almost. Thank you for this. My brother is disabled and living in a group home. My mom is getting older and I'm all that's left to manage his care. I think a lot of people don't realize the burden it puts on siblings. I have a friend who is going through abuse right now. She and her 5 siblings were all adopted through foster care. Her parents do nothing to help out most of the time, and she is left to care for all of them. Her and her 10-year-old sister are the only ones without special needs. Her mom-stepdad give her so much responsibility, and she is only 15. Her parents put on an act for everyone, including their social worker, so nobody notices the mental, verbal, and physical abuse. I don't know if it's the same situation, but I just wanted to share. I would see if she could talk to her school counselor, or a trusted teacher adult. That sounds like abuse.